Flame Breather X Invincible. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let's get started. Frank sees Invincible. Carrying Ellen Elephant, man, he starts thinking maybe it's the one time I can count on hero Frank. He's thinking, how will I get his attention? It makes his skin hard. I guess I'm gonna have to make some trouble now. Going to Duncan. Don't fight his eating breakfast with his mother saying the food is good as always. Mom Margaret says, so how's it been going? Duncan says school's been going well. Been going well, stuff like that. After me getting back from the dimension, just gonna check on the day. Mark calls Duncan and says. Mark says nothing much, so I might have vote with Aaron. Basically gave Cecil the ideal that dude dismission for Mark for Cecil, and I kind of use your help. Duncan says what's the mission, Marklin, that we need to go to Mars to look after the astronauts. As Mark is talking, Duncan thinks, and he starts remembering from the comics and the TV show that these can't really remember the name, but these creatures basically takes over the host, so I have to make sure that everything goes pretty well. He goes back to school and see Kenny, Isabel, William, and Mark. Isabel says, you be able to hang out later today, and Duncan starts talking insane. Not later today, me and Mark has work to do, but if you're going to be free, maybe this Saturday next. Saturday, Isabel says, okay, Duncan, you better make sure we hang out lately. I haven't been able to see you or Mark. Any new job got you working constantly? Duncan says, don't you know it? Mark see Eve. Mark says, how are you? Duncan says, should I be going to class right now? It seems like a moment between you two, so maybe I should leave. He's gonna step out. Even since last night was pretty well, it was pretty good, so when can I expect another one? Mark says, not today. Cecil was calling me and Duncan into a mission to go into Mars. Eve says, Mars. Eve says, be careful, come back safely, and Eve gets him a kiss on the cheek and go to class. The teacher teaches science, and also cybernetics. The class is done with this strange teacher. After class is over, Duncan, kind of useless, his superhero, because he thought the teacher was weird. Weird acting. Mark, before Mark you left the classroom. Mark said, don't forget we have that mission later. Duncan says, if this is the guy that makes cyborg out of humans. Duncan thinks so. I guess world is a mix of maybe be a mix of the MCU to DCQD, the comic book universe, and the show universe. He pulls out his phone, and he starts recording everything to his voice to the plans. He runs over to Mark and Eve. Duncan comes into a rush, and Mark and Eve says, what's wrong? What took you so long? It's almost time for Mars mission. Duncan says, forget about the Mars mission for right now. I think one of our teachers is a super villain. Mark says, aren't you being a little bit did you hear something? Duncan says, I'm being serious. I am really being serious. I recorded a recording and I play it, and says that's a little bit weird, maybe I'll do a stealth mission. Duncan asked, how long do we have until the Mars mission? Mark says, we don't have that, so you better make this quick. Duncan goes behind the school, takes off his backpack, unzip it. He puts his shirt and pants inside, having his costume underneath his clothes. Eve uses her power to transform at Eve's clothes and Mark's clothes into their superhero outfits. Then transforms, they hear screaming, and then they roar. They run to where they hear the screaming, and they see the weird, strange teacher experimenting on the student. Duncan rushes over and punches the teacher. Eve says, what were you doing? Aren't you a teacher? I hate teenagers. I hate the students. I hate my job. Why are you experimenting? And as Mark says that the strange and crazy teacher takes out a remote and transfer, and all the robots and the cyborg come out and starts punching Mark. Duncan and Eve. Mark says, what the heck is going on here? How many people did you experiment? How many students did you experiment on? This is crazy. Duncan says, focus, invincible. We probably have to get his remote from him. That's what's controlling these robots. Eve says, I'm on it. She uses her powers to make a kind of spiritual ball to kind of get the remote as Duncan and Mark are punching the machines, knocking them out. The rest of the robots and machines that are coming out even finds a way and pushes the turn off. Duncan says, why are you spying on these people while teenagers assassinated my son? Ever since I was take my revenge. So just because teenagers took out your son and that ended your son doesn't mean you the right to take it out. Basically used your cybernetics and technology when you should have been helping people. Not taking it out on people. Gosh, that's what Duncan says. Duncan calls Cecil. Says, what is going on, Duncan? Well, this strange teacher that I thought I was just a regular teacher was actually experimenting on teenagers. And Cecil says, what are you talking about? Basically, the teacher that we had for science actually experimented on teenagers. And basically, that's the whole situation as Kaiser people, especially Donald, comes in and says, can you need to go on this mission right now. And Eve says, good luck, you too. I'll tell Monster Girl that you'll be going. Duncan says, thank you. Cecil says, clear your heads. I know you deal with a huge situation, but here's going to be the plan. You and Mark are just a backup, just to make sure nothing goes wrong. This is supposed to be a human victory, not a superhero victory. You're just a backup, just in case anything goes wrong. Mark and Duncan has these helmets. In breather outfits, can't really breathe in space that well. They weak sitting on the ship, saying, what do you do? Duncan says, give me a second. Give me a second. So what do you want? Do you want chips? You want soda? Mark says, what the heck? How'd you get all the stuff on this mission? It's like you were prepared. Duncan can say that he got an upgrade to the flame breaker system to have an open pocket dimension to store stuff, or he's going to tell him a lie when Cecil said, pack, for a lunch I have stuff. So I got battery packs, the charger phone. They play games for a while until they hear the astronauts land down. Duncan says, I gotta remember to not forget the astronaut, cause in this part shaped alien hero in the invincible universe takes the place of one of the astronauts. And then the astronaut that got abducted got taken over by a slime, or whatever it's called in the shell. Duncan forgets the name, but understands. Duncan says, since I can go invisible, I should be with the astronauts, just making sure if I need backup, you'll be here. As Duncan goes invisible near the astronauts venture into a cave. And then a crack comes in the cage. We fall down and they find the Martian saying there's the ancient. Duncan falls underneath the astronaut. Active Martians, are you aliens? The leader of the Martians says we are Martians, but we have been living among these aliens and builds called the loot. The astronaut, do you mean? Duncan uses the communicator and says that Mark, be careful this line, they're in species that takes over people's body. We're gonna have to do a head count before Mark says okay. Mark said there were 20 astronauts on the spacecraft. Okay, Duncan does a quick head count once missing. Gosh, Mark says, what do you mean one is missing? Account 19. You said 20. Duncan. Use power to fly the astronauts, find a breeze of air, go past it. Wayne Brewer system mission, find the astronaut, you have 19 astronaut. Duncan searches the astronaut over Mars as Mark is going to try and save the astronauts. Mark says to Duncan, where are you? Duncan says, I'm trying to find his last astronaut. Duncan says, where are you? With the other astronauts and also with the Martian. Duncan is flying finding Shake and the other astronaut. Duncan talks to the Shake Smith. Duncan X, the other astronaut, are you okay? The astronaut says, I am, but I don't know who this person is. Duncan says to the astronaut, if I told you what it is, it would just be more confusing. He karate chopped the astronaut, knocking him out. Dunkel's Shake me, you do you want to come to planet Earth with me and my friends? And the other astronaut shakes me, thinks about it for a minute, says yes. Dick Smith says, what do we do? Duncan says, you pretend to be astronaut, I knocked him out. I knocked the other astronaut out, and you can become a hero, and I'll talk to Cecil when we get back. Shakespeare says, can I really become a hero like you? As long as you follow human rules, I think you can do great, thank you. Whatever your name is. Duncan says, my name is Flame Breather. Shake Smith says, okay, Flame Breather. I'll shake shipped into one of the astronauts a few hours later. Duncan wakes up the other astronaut and says, are you okay, bud? You hit your head when you fell. Before the astronaut woke up, then Duncan told Shake Smith the plan that told him his host, the whole script and everything. Shake Smith, disguised as an astronaut, says to the other astronaut, hey bud, Thanks to Flame Breather here, the superhero and invincible, he went go searching and stuff. Duncan says, if you two hang on, I can fly you up. Duncan goes on the communicator and says to Invincible, I found the other astronaut. I actually found 2, you were actually 21 astronauts. Duncan tells Invincible, meet them, take all the astronauts back, and make sure you're not followed by the England symbiote, says okay. Duncan wraps both the astronauts. Flies back out. Duncan contacts Invincible, and where are you at? You need my help. We're pretty good not being attacked right now. Okay, hurry up as fast as you can. I don't like being on this planet with any symbiote as you're doing that. Duncan gets on the communicator with Cecil. Duncan says the Cecil, I want your best man to check these astronauts out. Okay, make sure they're okay, cause I heard it was in here. I'm pretty sure no one's been hacked so far, but I want to make sure. Cecil says, okay, nice job, Flame Breather. Duncan sees Invincible running with the astronaut height. He tells the other astronaut to wait here, flies out the ship, helping Invincible make a tornado funnel, spinning around over and over. As they do, the rest of the slime get knocked back, and Invincible and Flame Breather get the rest of the astronauts on the ship. One of the astronauts start off the ship and stuff, and they blast off, they win, they land, and Cecil is waiting on the ground. Invincible, Flame Breather, you did pretty well today. Yeah. Pulls Invincible to a side and says, I'm going on a trip for a while. How long you'll be gone? Duncan says, I'll be gone for a few days. Invincible says, is it anything you want me to say to your parents or anything? Duncan, just tell her that I'll be back, and tell my girlfriend that I'll be back in a few days too. I might her something. Duncan flies to a nearby building and open a portal to a nearby world with his portal advice. He asks the flame-proofing system, which world am I going to first? The Flame Breather system says you have 2 options. You can go to the DCU or the MCU. Well, if I want to be stronger, I'll probably go to DCU, find a abandoned, and goes into the DCU. Walking through the portal, Duncan transforms into regular clothing. Duncan think, maybe I can find the new number skill if I bring Batman or Superman. I don't have to worry about Batman. He's going to be curious, and I need to find out where am I in the DCU. The Flame Breather system kicks and says you're in the beginning. Batman is just starting out, Superman starting out, and Wonder Woman starting out, and Aquaman is starting out. Cyborg is not cyborg yet. System Quest helps Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, or the other heroes. You get 100 skill. Duncan is thinking to himself, so I gotta help one of the heroes. Duncan weighs his options and thinks, okay, what hero is good? Batman's not Batman, just quite starting. Superman's not Superman yet. If we're thinking about this, the first, I gotta figure out what universe this is. If this is the movies, then the first threat is thawed. I look at the system, and Duncan asks the flame-breathing system, what universe am I in the DCU? The Flame Breather system says you're in the movie comic book series. Duncan says, all great, so I don't know. I definitely watched the movies and definitely read some of the comic books, but I don't know what type, so I don't know what universe is going to be at, so it could be coming, and I don't even know about it. Duncan looks at the system. Looks at his skill points. He has 120 skill points. Okay, let's see at the system. You have fire armor from the Flame Breather system. Can you have a axe of Duncan axes? The Flame Freeing system, do you have an upgrade? The Flame Breathing systems says I can have an upgrade, but it takes 100 points to upgrade. Duncan says do it. Flame Breather system takes a second, and then it improves it, and says now I have DCU and MCU and Flame Breather Invincible system. Duncan says sweet. So now that I have 3 sections that I can pick from, watch, check DCU section, nanotech Flame Breather system, switch to MCU. Duncan searches and sees Iron Man nanotech. It can be anything you can imagine. Sweet. Duncan picks that, and it only costs 500 points. I still have points left. He picks the Iron Man metal tech it in his storage system. So he's got the teleporting device in the nanotech, brings the nanotech out, and he has a full suit. Now this is a suit. I don't have to worry about wearing any broken up clothes ever again. But right now, I just want to be normal. As long as I don't transform, they're probably gonna think I'm a surfer. The nanotech shapes to a green shirt with a dragon face on it with the red jacket in the regular, like in the Flame Breather series, doesn't work, goes up to a random couple. It says, "Mister, I just moved into town. Can you help me out here? I don't know any places. Can you tell me out the places?" The man named Joe. He says that the restaurant it's a diner down the street. If we're finding a house, where is the Bruce Wayne house down the street with biggest house? Thank you, John. How much can I give you? No, John says it was my pleasure. If John says if we see each other in the future, so let's get some food sometime. Duncan says I definitely need to get a car in this car, and also a driver's license. Now, I can do it the regular way where I can use my flame breather system. And definitely going to the second option. Duncan is walking to a corner and he going to flame breather system. And seeing the yellow Bumblebee card that he becomes in the first Transformer movie upgraded version, Duncan is thinking, yes, this definitely has to be in my car. But I also need to pay for didn't know how to drive. Duncan pays for the car and also pays for do you know how and driver's license? The car is in his pocket dimension. In license is also in the pocket dimension. It says I'm 18 on the driver's license, Duncan sweet. And it also says infinite gas. I don't have to worry about gas at all. Isn't this a nice vehicle? He grabbed the car out, he gets in the passenger side. I seen people driving on TV, but I never been inside a car before. 'Cause always been in the hospital bed before, but I watched people drive. But luckily I got my flame breather system. Okay, grab the keys, turning in the hole, starting to cough up. Put my foot on the pedal. Not too badly, this does feel pretty good. Drives to Wayne Manor. He gets out the car, Duncan's taking a second. Watching this for the very first time. In real life, it's definitely a brand new look on things. This is really the manor where the richest orphan alive lives. I knocked on the door, and the ones you open the door is Alfred Pennyworth. Duncan looks at the butler of Bruce Wayne and the father figure. Nice evening, that's what Duncan says. Can I help you? Can I talk with Bruce? I know he just got back today. I like to speak to him. Alfred says give me 1 second. Alfred said Mr. Wayne, someone here. Bruce says who's here? No one should know I'm back yet. Alfred says this strong, strange mister knows you. Bruce walks to the door and says who's there? My name is Duncan. I know you pretended to be dead, so you do more. I know Joe Chill is the one that ordered the hill on your parents. And I know you went to the League of Assassin featuring trained in the ways of ninja, so you can be heroes, so you can be as simple. I know when you are 8 you lost your parents. I know Rise are good trained you. Bruce says how did you know that? And I can make you better. I was intrigued. Duncan says can I come in? So how do you know all this? Are you an information person? Have you been watching me? Duncan's even if I told you the truth, you wouldn't believe me. Bruce Wayne says try me. The world that you know is so much bigger. There are people out there like you that want to do good, want to be good, and want to do more. You might not know these people yet, but they're trying to find their path. Dislike you. Basically the short version of it is one day you will be part of the team. You will do so much more. Stop with the riddles already. Can you give me a simple answer? The first thing is you're gonna need a layer somewhere. You need to become a symbol, Bruce says. So what will I have to do? You're gonna have to spark fear into people, into the film wants, into the people that you want to stay afraid of you, but you're also gonna need the secret identity. People are gonna wonder what Bruce Wayne does. Bruce says we can use the old abandoned well. Duncan says have you conquered your fear of bats yet? Boots, we'll see. Bruce goes down with mining equipment and also flashlight as the record. As he goes down he sees a bunch of bats. He kind of freaks out at the beginning, but then he stands up with no fear in his eyes, no fear in his heart. After that big bat's coming around him. And Bruce says come down here, Alfred. Duncan looks Alfred and Duncan looks at him. Alfred says you're probably gonna need climbing equipment, and Duncan not, and shakes his head now and jump down. Bruce says what are you looking kind of shocked? Like I said, even if I told you where I came from, what I am, It would basically shock you. Just say, I'm not normal, or no, not from here either. So what's the first thing we need to do? That's what Bruce says. The first thing we need to do is get your company back. You need to buy back the shares, all of them. So when you go back to the table, the people that wants to kick you out of your family's company can't. And also we're going to need some people we can trust. We're going to need Alfred to master no doctor stuff like medicine, healings like that. We're also going to need a science guy, someone we can trust. You got a person in mind, that's what Bruce says. Duncan says maybe Lucius Fox. Bruce says, you got this whole day planned out at the whole thing, but some ideas. But first you need to get your company back. Bruce, put on a suit, insists to Duncan. Are you coming? Not exactly, I'll get the cave up and running while you go. Bruce gets in the car and drives to Wynn Enterprises. He walks into the building. He goes to waitress rape. The waitress is not really looking at him and saying, do you have an appointment? Bruce says yes. The waitress says, name Bruce Wayne. As the waitress has a little bit of a shock, he wants me to the board meeting room. Mr. Rushman says, what are you doing? Camper's back to take my company back from here. That's what I'm doing here. Mr. Rushman says, I have most of the shares. And Bruce says, I bought most of the shares, so I controlled this company. This was my family business. This was my father's business. This is my legacy. I'm going to make sure it's carried out. In my first thing of business is you're fired. Mr. John says, who's going to do my job? I'm going to hire Lucius Fox to do your job. Lucius, you have a commission. You have a big promotion, please. And thank you, and let me see what we got. Lucius, meet me in your old apartment for the job. I'm going to need some things. Few hours later, down in the science apartment. I'm going to need some light fabrics, some heavy armor. Lucius says, what are you using this all for? Be honest with you. I'm going to be using this for a secret mission that I'm going to be a part of, and I'm going to need your help. Lucius, what will this mission entail? That's what Lucius says the mission entails. Are you the science person? Making me new technology. I'll get back to you on the details a little bit later. Bruce got in the car with Alfred is driving, but then he says he made the front page a few minutes later. Bruce says to Duncan, so what did you do? Duncan says, follow me. Duncan walks to the piano, pipes 3 keys, and it opens a secret entrance to elevator to the cave. Duncan says, gentlemen, get ready to go to your bad cave. The elevator goes down. The bat cave has lights, about computer of giant pad waterfall, some bad gadgets. Batarangs, basically foldable thrown stars, with shock bat rings, regular ones explosive. As of ones, the melt, belt buckle. Duncan says, what did you think? Bruce says, how did you get that stuff? Are you doing there when you're in your hometown? Let's just say I had some materials that I can spare. Duncan saying inside his head. I definitely use my flame breather system to buy the whole setup. But he's not going to tell them that. So did you find a suit or anything? Bruce brought the case where the prototype bat suit is in. Lucius. He dodges its bulletproof shock and stuff like that. I also got a light fabric. Duncan says, I also built you a helmet and got you a voice changer. You don't need people recognizing your voice, don't you? I guess you're right about that. That's what Bruce says. Process now. What now? What do we do? Dunk says, now we need to ride some cages. Tonight we're going to go out. We're going to get Barbara Gordon on our side. He's the only good cop in the city. Bruce works on his utility belt, getting the gadgets together. Well, Duncan, the pet suit spray painting, putting my bed symbol on it, working on gauntlets. Getting a new gadget that he saw from the Batman Begins movie, where he summoned all the bats. Bruce act, what's that gadget? Let's say some in a little bit of help from your little friends. You ready to go out, Batman? Sure, let's see what the suit can do. But you're definitely gonna need a suit. Duncan is thinking about all the superheroes that he read over the years, the super suit, what he can use in dunking. Get an idea. He thinks of green goggles. This shirt is a orange with a F and a B, the initials of flame breather he made. He has a silver belt and an orange belt. The pants is red with orange Batman and Duncan, and goes out. Batman acts. Duncan, what do we need? Duncan says what we need to do is go to the one good comp in the city. Duncan goes inside his head and uses the flame breather system and access the flame breather system. Where is Jim Gordon? The flame breather system gives him a location. They wait until night in the office. Batman talks to him and says, "Don't turn around." Jim Gordon says, "Who are you?" Batman says, "What will it take to bring from Coney down?" Jim Gordon says, "You need a good lawyer, someone to finally testify in some evidence." Ban says, "Watch for my sign." Batman went out, jumping on the window, climbing the stairs to the roof. Is that over? Instead of tripping, he uses the light fabrics a little bit early and glides away. Jim Gordon calls for backup, but Batman gets away. Batman meets up with Duncan and Batman says, "What's next?" "It's the next plan." Duncan says, "The next plan is we have to get Falcone's men. They're gonna have a shipment tonight." Batman says, "Where's the shipment?" Duncan says, "Give me a second." He goes back to the flame breathing system, asking it where is Falcone's shipment, and then he gets a location down at the docks. They glide to the shipment. Falcone is driving down to the shipyard. He's talking to Jim Gordon, partner, and they talking about how this ship is going well, how Mr. Browse Al Ghul is coming soon. And well, the shipyard isn't doing pretty good. Falcone minions is splitting the shipment in half, and Duncan and Batman is nearby. Batman says, "What's the plan?" Duncan says, "The plan is you plan those nice batterings that you just got, and you throw them at the lights. Knocked him out. We take Falcon down, and that's one crime off the streets." Batman says it's a pretty decent plan as Falcone's goons go. Batman starts throwing batterings, breaking each light, punching the guns, dragging them away into the dark. Gordon's partner is saying, "Get away, you might want to get out of here. It's trouble." Duncan knocks him out as soon as the car leaves as Batman is knocking out the guns. I tied them both up and dislike the movie. Duncan and Batman tie them up to a host. Falcone closer to the light and Jim Gordon's ex-partner down below. They get closer. Duncan and Batman glide away. Jim Gordon gets to the scene first. They look at the people that's been tied up, then Jim Gordon looks at the sky, and it kind of shoots like that. Jim Gordon looks down and looks at the note, and it has on it, "Tailed Batman and Flame Breather." Show pictures of Jim Gordon's ex-partner with Falcone. Jim Gordon says, "Get these people down, cut them down right now." Batman poov. He says, "We're doing next." Duncan says they probably sent people at the news pal. Rachel. Batman says, "How do you know this? 'Cause I heard them talking they were gonna get rid of her tonight. So before we call it a night, we have to go and we have to give her this." Batman says this evidence leaked to her. That's what Duncan says. "This is how we get things moving." Rachel. Poov. Rachel is walking to the train station to walk home. Falconia guys are following her. The 4 people that was there to take care of her to get rid of her. They look. Rachel tries to find her. They see Duncan and Batman and they run away. Rachel turns around and looks at Batman and Flame Breather, and she says in screams and tries to pull out the stun gun. After she pulls out the stun gun, she shoots that Batman. But his armor it doesn't work on Batman's armor, and Batman pulls off the stun pens off the armor and throws the evidence. Rachel says, "What is this?" Batman says, "This is evidence, put him away forever." And Rachel says, "Who are you?" to Batman says, "Where people like you, people like running cages." Stopping villain in his modified voice. And as she looks down, they disappear. They go back to the back cave and Bruce says, "What's next?" Duncan says, "Well, they weren't working alone. The shipment was cut in half. There has to be someone higher up than the villains. But I'll think about that later. You need to get some sleep and to tomorrow night, go out as Bruce." And Bruce says, "Why do I have to go out as Bruce?" "Because all heroes need a secret identity. People are gonna ask questions. Look at yourself, you're banged up, and do you really have an explanation for that? You need to have 2 lives, basically a life that's Batman in a room and a life that is Bruce. If these 2 waves don't become separate, then people can find out who you really are. You're gonna make enemies villain to come after Batman. They have to be separate. But don't forget to have love in the middle." Bruce says, "Do you have friends? Do you have love?" Duncan says, "I have a couple of friends. I also have a girlfriend that I'm probably gonna have to make things up to her. But the thing is, you need people that you can trust. You also need friends outside this life. I'm telling you the truth for a person that's been in this little bit longer than you have. Take it from me." Bruce says, okay, but you're definitely coming with me when I go out. Okay, but you definitely need to get some sleep. Duncan says maybe from now on, if you're going to stay out, you might want to cat naps or just nap in general, princess. Thanks for the advice. Walks out the cave, and I'll see you later. Bruce says you have a place here, and Duncan says no, I don't. Well, where am I going to stay? Bruce says you can stay here, thanks. And Alfred comes in and says you need rest too. I don't know where you came from, Mr. Duncan, but I'm glad you came. If he wasn't here, I don't know who else he would listen to. I know Alfred well, I won't be here all the time, have other things to do. I also have my homework to go back to you, so once this mission is done with, I'm pretty much gonna go home. But I'll give him my cell phone just in case he needs me. Thank you, that's what Alfred says. Duncan takes a spare bedroom in the manor. He thinks about this place out, like the Batman Begins movie. So if I'm really thinking about this rise, Algol is still alive and Scarecrow is alive. And also one of the devices will be stolen. Maybe if I take the vice, what was it called? It was basically the vice, got to make the water into steam, basically. And that was the whole point of the fear that the Scarecrow made no machine, no big plan. As Bruce and Alfred went to bed for the night, Duncan did a portal to Wayne Manor, going invisible to Lucius Fox in my superhero costume. Duncan says Mr. Fox, and Lucius says, so you must be working with Batman. Duncan says something like that. Lucia just says you must be Flame Breather, then Lucius says yes. But if you really want to save the world, remember the machine that turns water into steam, where is it? Lucius says, why do you want it? Duncan says, there's people that I was fighting on the shipyard. Falcone's men split the shipment in half. And I think that the boss that was controlling the whole thing is actually gonna come for this machine, because I think the plan is to mix this chemical. Come in the water mixing, using that machine that's at Wayne Tower. Duncan gives Lucius the chemical. I might need an antidote. Can you make an antidote for me? Will affect everyone, and I want to be prepared. Lucius says, what do I gotta lose? Duncan says, I messed up the cameras here when I got here, so no one will know. You can just say it was stolen, and it was no evidence, Lucius says. You know how to cover your tracks. Duncan says, no, a stupid person would just walked in and tried to take the machine from a smart company. I don't need the police on this, not right now. You show the machine. Lucius says, here's the machine, but how are we going to get it out of here? Duncan says, turn around and don't look until I tell you to. Duncan sucks the machine into his flame reader pocket dimension. Duncan tells Lucius to. You can look now. Lucius says, what is going on? How did you do that? And Duncan says, family secret, we're gonna need the antidote. So when you get a chance, work on the antidote. Duncan axes the flame breather system. Can you make Wayne Tower stronger? In the flame breather system says you can make the weapon. You can make a shock person to wall around the building. Only the people that work it and people that go in it can control it, especially you. How many points? And the flame breather system says it's 500 points. Duncan says this duet flame breather system, Ling breather system says you have 490 points left. Duncan says I better get a lot of points from this mission. He leaves Wayne Tower, sneaks out by going in. It's going invisible and finally laying down. Duncan is going to sleep. Jim Gordon, Puv, the commissioner of the pool. The Gotham Police Department says, I want this vigilant Batman behind bars right now. When you find them, you arrest him. Rachel Pew, she's at her workplace trying to convince her partner about seeing the story. Rachel is telling him that Batman and his flame breeder gave them everything to put from Cone away. Rachel, partner. Okay, what's wrong? The story. Bruce Point Puv, he's waking up. Alfred opens the curtains and says 3 o'clock is pushing it for rich playboy. You're gonna need a life outside of this visual work. Bruce says you're not the only one that says. Duncan said that till maybe that boy is right. That's what Alfred says. Maybe he knows more than he lets someone. Bruce says he did say he was a superhero in his hometown. Duncan comes and says I heard my name. Maybe tonight we party, maybe we fight. I don't know that Rachel girl. Bruce says why? Duncan says why not? Your old friends, aren't you? You could take her to a restaurant. You have money, don't you? Come on, take her to a restaurant. Buy a restaurant, use something. How about we take one of your fancy cars? We get all dressed up, and we go to a restaurant, a movie, something like that. We can play golf, do something. Duncan says, come on. Isn't it something else you want to do today? Bruce says, fine, we'll go to that dumb restaurant. You'll have some fun. Duncan says, I'm trying to get yourself a girlfriend. Bruce says, why do I need a girlfriend? Happy one is pretty nice to have around, especially in one that knows your secret identity. Bruce says, you have a girlfriend that knows your secret. I didn't. She's a superhero too. I need to make things up to her. Then why do you bring her then? Why won't you bring her out today? My home place is kind of far away. I'll bring it next time. Promise. Time skip later tonight. Bruce bought Duncan in my nice suit. It's a black with a tile with fancy black shoes. Duncan says, do I owe you for this? When I have the money, I'll give you back the money that you spent. Says, thank you. Think of it as a thank you gift for helping me. I might give you a car too. Duncan says, a cartoon. Go to a restaurant. Duncan has 3 girls following him. Because work, meaning talking to her. They're making small talk about, they're talking about Batman dressing as a bat, saying it's funny and stuff, and Bruce is saying dressing. Her bat has kind of a little bit of issues, but then the 3 girls get in the fishing tank. And in the waiter says, this is not a hotel. And Bruce makes a full check to buy the whole hotel and jumps into the water in Duncan. This hits his hand on his face and his face pops. A little bit later, with 3 girls find a table and around Duncan's hair, and then he runs into Rachel. Duncan smiles at the Rachel, says, when were you back in town? Bruce says, I just got back. A reason to go so well. Well, Rachel. So while you're having fun with the world is destroying the city and stuff. This is me. This is not. That's what Bruce has. Rachel says, it's not you are underneath. It's what you do to defies you. And Duncan, this stinks inside his head. I watched it on TV and stuff. Never thought I sent in real life. Next day. At Wayne Tower, the board is talking about someone messed up the cameras. I took the machine that makes steam. It's misting. Who took it? Does anyone know who took it? The board meeting looks at him and says, I don't know who took it. With call, Lucius. Lucius walks in and says, and the board meeting looks at him and says, do you know who took it? Lucius. Lucius says, I don't know who took it. Okay, I will. I left home. You can't get any information off the cameras. Maybe you can. Falcone. Falcon is in the assignment, basically a prison. His doctor. IK Scarecrow going as a doctor goes to see Franny. Scarecrow says, do you know anything from Coney? Says, I don't know anything. Scare process. I know you would. Falcone says, whatever the big man, the man in charge wants. I know, he got a shipment of drugs of chemicals in the dock. And I went in. Scarecrow says, do you want to see my mask? And he puts on his Scarecrow mask and put in a special spray, and after he puts Balcony in a super of hypnosis of fear. He takes it off and puts back on glasses, and he talks to the doctor and says, I'll move him to autumn. Time skips, and it's nighttime now. Batman goes back to Gordon's place. Jim Gordon is taking out the trash. Batman shows up on his step. Jim Gordon closes the door. Batman says, the shipment they closed last night. They split the shipment in half. Jim Corman says, what about the other half? Batman says, my friend says someone is working with someone. Jim Gordon says, do you know who? Not yet. Jim Gordon says, no, the chief of the police station sent out a bounty on you to bring you in. He thinks you're dangerous. He thinks he want the criminals. Batman's, what do you think? Jim Gordon's, I think you're trying to help. I think you're here to help. And Batman vanishes. Meet up with Duncan. Duncan says to Batman that they're going to have the shipment. We need to head over there right now. They make it to the ship. But Batman says, I thought you said was going to burn the shipment, dump them this week. They watch as taking the chemicals out of the stuff in. Batman says, this what you meant? And Scarecrow, aka the Dr. Scarecrow, says, burn the shipment in. Batman, it's going like you said. It was. Batman and Duncan get into the warehouse. Scarecrow put on his mask for Batman and taking out some of the bad people. Punching punches in the wall will scare snakes on. Batman spray scare. He says his creepy voice, are you afraid? Batman tries to swing away the gas away, but Batman sees different pictures and flashbacks of his parents. And Scarecrow gas and put him on fire. Punch. Duncan punches Scarecrow, gets away. But then he pulls out the antidote, opens the portal, changes Bruce out of his bet costume, tells Alfred that he's been poisoned. But I gave him the antidote, that's what Duncan says to Alfred. Alfred says thank you. Midnight skips on the skip to the next day. It skips over 2 days, actually, and Bruce wakes up Duncan and Alfred sits there. Duncan says you're back awake. Alfred says welcome back to the living. It's your birthday. Bruce says how long have I been out? Alfred says for 2 days. Bruce says, I know the effects before. Duncan says where. Bruce says where I trained. I went to this place to see training and stuff like that. But it seems like he's effects or enhanced. Duncan says I think we should tell Lucius about the truth about this. We can trust them. Bruce wise that he's the one that gave me the antidote. That's what Duncan says. The only reason why you're still alive is because he gave me this, and the only reason why I have this just because I gave him half the drugs. He had a blood sample of your regular DNA, and that's how you was able to make an antidote. I can get in contact with Lucius and make more. We have to tell him the truth, but you need to rest for right now. Bruce says I'm okay, I'm just fine, but I felt these effects before. But they're stronger some reason. Duncan says where have you felt these effects before? Bruce says I felt them at the League of Assassins. Duncan says you don't think they're behind this? Bruce says I don't think so. I made sure that they're not alive. Their house burned down, only one person survived. Duncan says let's just put a pin in it for right. He calls Lucius and says can you make more of an adult? Lucius says is it you? Flame breather. Duncan says it is. Can you meet me at Wayne Manor? Which Lucius says why Wayne Manor? Just meet me there. Lucius Fox tribes to Wayne Manor. He pulls up knocking on the door, and then Alfred opens the door. Hi, it says hi. Lucius in. Alfred walks Lucius in, and then Lucius says the Bruce what happened on you, and then Duncan comes in and says he's been poisoned. He's Batman and we need your help. And Lucia says you're fine breathing. Duncan says yes. Lucius says, so you're the one that took the advice that turns water into steam. You're also the one that told me to make more antidote to the gas. Duncan said that you do it. Yeah, I did it. Bruce says what you have him. What says I had him make an antidote? That's what Duncan says. Bruce says why did you get him to make you the answer? Because you never know who might have needed it. Bruce says at least you were prepared. Lucius says so do you two know who's a part of this? Duncan says all I know is someone bigger is part of this. Well, Duncan and Bruce is thinking about Rachel Pub. Rachel knocked on the door and Alfred says I'll get it. Alfred says Rachel what are you doing? Rachel says his birthday today to give him a special gift. Duncan Houston with his super hearing. Duncan tells Bruce go to the door. Bruce says why? Duncan just go to the door. Bruce walks to the front door. Bruce says Rachel what are you doing here? Rachel said I came here to wish you a happy birthday. Then Rachel it's a phone call saying that her partner that works at the news station was missing. Bruce here, and Rachel says have a good party. Bruce. Rachel is trying to rush to our car. Bruce says we gotta rush there. But you have guest in a few hours. That's what Alfred says. How about we do this 2 different ways? That's what Duncan says. You stay at the party as Bruce Wayne tonight, and I'll check it out. Alfred said that could sound like a good idea since it's 2 of you. Duncan gives him a strange device. If you have this, you can contact you and I can contact you. It's an advice that Lucius was also working on. If anything goes off, Bruce says you can let me know. Duncan says I know. Duncan says to tonight just be Bruce Wayne. Time skip is nighttime and Duncan is checking it out since Duncan can go invisible. He falls in where Rachel is going. Rachel is going with Scarecrow down below. Rachel is seeing where the gas, the drugs, and all that other stuff is being made, how he's using the patient, and how he's using the criminals to make this stuff. Rachel figure that out. She goes to the elevator like the movies. But before Scarecrow could get to the elevator, Duncan gets out of invisibility and starts punching his. When Duncan opens up the elevator doors, he looks at Rachel. And Rachel says, how did you know I was in danger? Duncan says, how did I know? Duncan says, well, you rat, you kind of messed up a whole organization in this doctor of yours that's supposed to be a psychologist. It was a front. Me and my friend were keep an eye on you. You were the person that we gave the information to put into the nuisance stuff, but we have to get you out of here. Duncan says close your eyes, as Rachel closes her eyes. Duncan closes his eyes, making a portal tour to our house. Gives her an antidote. I'll give you two if anything, if you see any gas, if you see anything you put an ant and you inject yourself with antidote. Rachel says, how do you know all this? You don't have time for that. If Duncan remembers how the Batman Begins movie started, Rachel Gull should be coming on time. If I can stop him before anything bad, Duncan flies to the main manor and transforms into a full orange suit. It looks pretty nice. He looks in the window, actually using his flame-breathing system to see how many people. The flame-breathing system says it's 100, but he sees glowing dots in the flame print system. They are red, and that means they're mostly enemies. Duncan thinks fast. He puts a car on fire and runs into Way Manor and says everybody needs to get out right now. And everybody's looking at him like thinking, what's this person doing? And Duncan says, you really think I'm joking? Look outside, cars are on fire, everybody run. And everybody's just start running. Duncan has a smile on his face like he won. Not yet. Rachel Ghoul tries to put his house on fire, but Duncan grabs the explosive and Duncan grabs Rachel Goose's hand and says that's a bad idea. Rachel Goose says, who are you? Someone that you don't want to mess with. Grabs the bottle, throws it at the top of the sky, breaking the window. Breaking the ceiling, and goes so up to the sky, it goes to the moon. Rachel Ghost says, what are you? And Duncan says, would you like to know? Bruce and Duncan kick out some of his guns, punching, kicking, using some martial arts. Duncan doesn't have to try so hard because he has super strength and he from his memory. Duncan kinda knew how to fight already. Duncan sees Rachel get away. He knocks all of them out. Duncan says, are you okay? Bruce, yeah, I'm okay. But how the toxins that you said you knew the effects, it was only in one place before, in the mountains where you remember. And Duncan's says, just wait a quick second, okay? Let's do a rain check real quick, okay? So the League of Assassins was behind this whole entire thing. Let's check their plan real quick. Duncan says, so was Rachel Gould. And Bruce says, how did you know? I wasn't sure, not totally sure. That's what Duncan says. And Bruce says they were behind a gas that they were trying to get behind. They were trying to steal the machine that makes water into gas, and they were trying to make people afraid everywhere. Bruce says, your point is? Duncan says, my point is they didn't get the machine. I hid it. I hide it, the machine, so what's the last thing that they can do? Put it into water. If they put that stuff into water, says we make it to the Batcave right now. He hits the 3 keys on the piano, opening up the secret entrance. Goes down to the elevator, going to his secret apartment in his backyard, where he keeps the bat, and he suits up. And then Duncan asks him, so so they're gonna need a lot of that gas going into the water. So where does it connect to? Everywhere. It's gonna be in the sewer. Well, my question is, how to get to? And that does Bruce. You have a plan. We use the machine that they were trying to get. Bruce says, what are you talking about? I took the machine that turns water into gas. Duncan says that's what they were after. Bruce says, why did you hear about that in the news? 'Cause I made the tower building, and I also took the device for safekeeping. So, okay, Bruce, okay. So that's the plan. Can you stop Rachel Goal? And we stopped his coons, and we fixed the whole thing. Rachel Good says we need to hurry up with this plan. We should have found that machine. Duncan and Batman is running the source, or found Rachel Good. Raid send. How did you find me while you went to the center of the sewers? I wasn't that hard to track. Rachel Good says you can't stop me, and then he summons a couple goons. Duncan says, I'll deal with the guns, you deal with him. Duncan punches and kicks the goons. The bad people knock them out, using his super strength, while Batman grapple up and find Rachel Good. Rachel Good says, you literally took what I said. Literally, I can't believe it. You burned my house, but I saw you got a little friend. Can't believe this. You could have been the key to Gotham. Batman says, I am the key to Gotham. I will make God good again. I'll find a way. Rachel Good pulls out a sword and tries to slash and cut Batman. Batman holds the sword and breaks it, punching him. Rachel Good dumps Detox into the water. As Duncan finishes the gun, He jumps up to Rachel Good and Batman as the weight that the bridge was carrying seems like it's gonna slow. Duncan takes Batman before the bridge explodes. Rachel Good falls into Duncan. Proud Batman and grabbed him, and Duncan gives him to his safety. Duncan says we got still one more job to do. Duncan puts the machine down. Batman, I modified the machine to put the hand to spread all over, and I actually copied the machine. I put the antidote all over the city, so no one will be affected by the gas. Next day, Bruce is sitting at his house, and Duncan says, what are you gonna do now? You got your company, you got Rachel. Bruce says, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna go home. I might go back home maybe, or I might explore the world, maybe make a club or a league or something. And Bruce says, you can stay. We did some good things. Duncan says, isn't my home. This isn't my city. You'll be a good hero, you be one of the best. Bruce says, will you come? Will you be back? Duncan says, we will always be friends first, but less world of advice. Tell Rachel how you feel, tell her the truth. Tell the whole mission, tell someone from experience doing this whole hero gig alone. And what I'm meaning about that, having someone to fight for, having something to fight for. I know you have this whole mission, I have to do it for my parents, but doing it for someone more, it's better. Duncan says, how about this before I leave? We have one more party. It could just be me, you, Alfred, and Rachel, and you get to tell her the truth for once, and I want you to tell her the truth. But as Duncan goes and has his little party, and the invincible world, Titan is rocking a bank, knocking off some guys. The securing the guards are trying to stop him, shooting them down. Knock them out, taking the most one of the guys that owes Machine Head money, and treat Cell own Machine. He's holding him on the roof. He looks at his wife, seen that as a family, and then what's the guy go? Back to his boss, to his office. Titan says, I'm done. Machine Head, why would I let you? Machine Head says, you're a muscle. You're everything. You wouldn't want me to threaten that little family that you have. Titan gets head and breaks the desk machine headset scene. That's why you are never letting you go. Titan goes back home and talk to his wife. His wife says, are we out? And he says no. And then he walks out of the door. Titan was thinking, I need to solve this quickly. Mark is sitting on top of the building with Adam Eve. Mark says, how long has it been? Eve says, it's been 1 day since he gone. Mark says, I hope he's okay. Eve says, you know how strong he is. He's probably being pretty awesome, probably partying. I always wanted to explore the world. Mark says that this feels different. They are looking down and they see a man in some rock armor calling trouble. They fly down and they get to the scene. Mark says, what are you doing? Who are you? Titan says, finally I found you. Invincible says, what do you mean you found me? Are we supposed to fight now or what's going on here? Titan says, I have a big problem. Eve is thinking, I don't know about this guy. Says, let's see what he thinks first. Adam Eve takes him into a pink bubble and takes him to the ceiling. And Invincible flies to the river. Now Titan, is it that says, so what's your problem? Titan says, I used to get money from my old boss, and now he won't let me leave. And an Invincible cell says, who's your boss? Machine Head Invincible says, that can't be your real name. Let me funny, what he does to my town. Let me show you what happens down below, the places that you don't post to be saved. Eve says, we don't got nothing better to do. Invincible carries Titan and Adam. Eve falls behind and Titan says, you couldn't find me a better way to travel. It was this. Are you in a pick bubble? One buddy, that's what Invincible says. Invincible, Adam, Eve, and Titan go down, and Titan shows them his street deals, the different stuff, the drugs on the streets and trash cans, and Titan says Machine Head controls it all. Adam Eve looks at all this and says, the Invincible, we could get the Guardians of the Glow on it. Invincible says, we gotta think this through. We gotta get the whole team on it. Invincible says, if I take Machine Head down, who's gonna take his place? Titan says, it'll be me. Of course the principal says, so we're training one overlord, my boss, for another. Titan says, I'll make it better. I'll make it cleaner when people won't have to struggle. It'll be better around here. I'll make it better, and says, we'll think about this. As Mark and Eve are sitting at the dinner to people, they tell about Titan and about all this stuff. Nolan says, it seems like a trap. Mark says, I'm not stupid. I know when someone's lying, no one says you're a vulture. Might you stop an invasion? You do more than things for the city. This seems beneath you, Mark says. But this guy seems like he needs help. And Mark tries to get his mom's attention, but Debbie got something else on her mind, and Mark tries to get her attention again, and then she finally answers. Debbie says, "What is it about Titan? So should I help him or should this? Or what's the issue?" Debbie says, "You'll have people telling you what to do with your powers. But you will choose. You get to choose who you want to be. You get to choose what hero you want to be. Some people are not what they seem, but sometimes doing the right thing is better, so if I have a final opinion about it, I think you should help Tite." Mark says, "I'll sleep on it," hugs Eve and says, "I'll see you tomorrow, Eve." She says, "Okay." After Eve leaves, Nolan says, "What was that about?" Debbie says, "What are you talking about?" "Tell Mark you should help Titan." Debbie says, "What's that about? Why are you angry that I'm telling our son to do to help a person?" Nolan says, "This is being with him. He has better responsibilities than this." Debbie says, "Why are you acting like this ever since he got his powers? You've been acting way differently, even more angry, even more distance, and I don't want him to do any stupid stuff or get hard." That's what Nolan says. Mark calls Duncan on the special device that Duncan gave him before he left. It rings and Duncan's getting up and says, "Who is calling me at this error?" Duncan picks up the phone and says, "What is it, man?" Says, "I need third opinion." Duncan says, "What's it?" Mark says, "A guy with a sick family, with working for a mob boss called Machine. Should I help him?" Duncan says, "I think you should wait until I'm there." "What's the deadline?" Mark says, "Eve and me told him give us tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow." Mark says, "Okay, thank you, see you tomorrow, man." Back, Debbie is looking at the arm suit that's ripped up and straight from the day that he took out the Guardians of the Globe. She found it underneath the cabinet, a secret apartment, and she says, "What is?" She takes it immediately, put him into a trash bag. Debbie looks at this and says, "Who do I take it to?" Death rushes over to Margaret's house, knocking on the door, brushing. Margaret says, I'm coming." She sees Debbie in a panic in her rush. Debbie says, "I need to talk to you. I need to talk to someone about this." Margaret says, "What is it? What's the problem?" Margaret invites Debbie into the house. I found something very bad." They are sitting at the table. Margaret is saying so. It's a ripped up costume with some blood on it. What's the point? I don't know. He feels wrong for some reason. I think he killed the Guardians, but it's only one person we need to bring this to. He goes to the suit crafter. "Hi Debbie." "Hi Margaret. How are you two doing at this fine hour?" Debbie says, "It's an emergency. Can you check some for me?" "Is checking the seat for everything." "I'll check it, but you two need to sleep." "Okay." Debbie says, "Can I sleep over at your house tonight, please?" Margaret, "I don't face the truth." "It's okay." Margaret says, "If he is the person that killed the Guardians, we need to act normal." Debbie said that go back. She walks back to our house, and Nolan says, "Where have you been?" "It's pretty late." Debbie said, "I was with Margaret. Duncan's mother was like pretty much a little outing." They go to bed. Next day, Duncan wakes up and says, "I gotta go." He wakes up to a spare bedroom that's in the main manor, and Duncan says, "Alfred, thank you for everything, but it's time for me to go home. I gotta help my friend with an issue. Try and keep Bruce, I don't know what's the word, safe, kind of balanced, kind of. I guess this job can get a little overwhelming, but okay." Alfred Duncan, and says, "You take care of yourself. You're welcome here anytime." "Okay." Duncan looks at Bruce and says, "You'll be your friend golfing back one day, right?" "Glory." Duncan says, "You'll bring Gotham City back to its rightful glory. You're a good man with a good heart, Bruce. So, see you when it gets in the car and drive away." As he gets in the car, the flame breather system says, "You got 90,000, and you have a full company building." That's what the flame printing system says. These are rewards that you got from helping Batman. Duncan says, "Sweet." Duncan gets far enough from Gotham City and opens up the portal. He walks into his home and says, "Mom, I'm home." Margaret says, "Welcome home, sweetie." He sees Debbie and says, "What's happened here?" Margaret says, "Well, Debbie stayed over tonight." Duncan says, Hi, Miss Grayson. I guess good morning. I guess Margaret says, do you have to take a shower? Something. Yeah, take a shower. My son, no. I got to take a shower before I came home, so I'm just gonna head out again. I'm gonna meet Mark. Duncan says he told me everything about what happened yesterday. That's why I came home early. They trying to help him. I can meet up with Mark and give him all his work. Says luckily it's good that I'm student. Duncan asks, how was Amanda? Mark says she wasn't happy. You're gonna have things up with her. I know Amanda walks in. Duncan, a little bit taller. I've been wearing your belt nonstop, so I look a little taller, but you vacation. It wasn't a vacation. That's what Don says. Amanda, so you're gonna have to make this up to me. I will. I promise. Get her a kiss. Duncan, did Mark catch you up? What's happening? Amanda said, yeah, he told me everything. Duncan, Amanda, Mark, Eve go to the Guardians HQ and robot duplicate. They tell them about the plan. Duncan says this is the plan. Invincible will go in and see what timing is done. We'll be on standby. They care about the plan and they says okay. Invincible goes into the building with Titan. But then Machine Head is waiting at his desk. Machine Head is talking about, oh, so the little new superhero called Invincible thinks he can just come in my office and do what in Titan, my old buddy, what do you think you will do? And Titan says we came to stop you, and then his little pet dragon comes in the door. And Invincible says, I thought you said he was about to be off, and then this big white tiger comes in and starts attacking before they start attacking. Invincible says now Duncan comes through the wall and breaks it down. Duncan also says, are we a little bit late to the party? Guardians of the Globe come through, duplicate Adam, Eve, Black Samson. Duncan rushes to battle Beast, knocking him out. Duplicate his goal. This machine had Duncan thinks, where's Robot? Robot makes a sonic boom, but then one of the machine has goons electrocutes them. Monster Girl comes in and gets knocked back. Invincible is dealing with battle piece, but he's getting overwhelmed. Duncan is trying to punch. He goes into his battle. That makes him 10 times stronger, knocking them all out, moving faster and quicker, and then he passes out. Cecil comes and take them to their special hospital. Omni-Man sees what happens from down below. The next Monken and Mark wake up. Debbie and Margaret and Adam Eve is there. Duncan wake up first and says it feels like I got hit by a truck. And Margaret, as you kinda did, sweetie, that situation that you and your friend was going on it back. So everybody okay. Eva says Monster Girl is stable. Black Samson is unconscious. Duncan's, as I gotta get to Amanda. Margaret says to Duncan, you gotta heal first. I'm already healed faster than Mark. Let me see her. See her? At least Margaret says I'll go with you. As Duncan and Margaret walk out of the room, then Nolan walks in the room and says, how are you doing, Mark? Mark says I'm doing pretty well. Debbie's giving him kind of a sigh, and then Cecil comes in. Cecil says, can we talk, Nolan? They walk to the hallway and Cecil says, you didn't know about this. Nolan says, I didn't know about this. We thought you talked about not taking the bait, but it actually went pretty well wrong. And Cecil says the teenager's own. Bertram doesn't act like this. Canwin says no, they don't. Nolan also gets mad and punches the wall. But then Duncan goes to see Amanda. At least her healing is kicking in. Then I'll end this part.